So I didn't buy any CDs throughout the month of June, and it was very excruciating but necessary because every once in a while I usually take a break from buying anything just so I can get caught up on any listening I want to do and also save money. That's probably the number one reason. But it's July and therefore the ban has been lifted, and I went ahead and I bought some CDs, and man did I went all out as usual. So we have over 60 albums or CDs to show, so I'm going to try and get through this as quick as I can, but hopefully you missed these monthly CD haul videos. If you did, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's just dive right into it. Bryer's Music Showcase is brought to you by the people over at Patreon. Pledge today and get access to exclusive perks. Link in the description. So like usual, I'm going to start with CDs I'm really not going to talk about too much. Well, aside from one, because this CD I actually did get during June, and no, I didn't buy it. It was actually a gift. And let me showcase the album first. The album in question is Music for the Masses by Depeche Mode. So shout out to my friend Scott from SoundLab Studios. He actually sent this to me. So again, I didn't buy anything throughout June, so this doesn't count. But I wanted to showcase it, and I did throw a post on it, I think, not long after I did my entire CD collection video. I think I left a post about it a little bit afterward, because it did come like maybe a couple days afterward. But just want to showcase it right here, and I will give my brief thoughts on this one. It's a pretty good album. I really had a good time with this one. There were some really good songs, you know, Never Let Me Down Again, The Thing You Said, Love Strange, Sacred Little 15, and also Nothing was pretty nice, and I Want You Now. There's some really good stuff on this. I still prefer Violator, but it's kind of hard to beat Violator, at least for now. I could be wrong, but there you go. I just want to showcase this one real quick, and again, thank you to Scott for sending me that. But then these next two, I'm not going to say much because I talked about these. Well, I talked about one of these in a different video on another channel, and again, it's part of the album exchange, and we have the Gap Band, and this is the Gap Band 4. So like I said, this was part of the album exchange with, you know, Jason, Scott, Nick, and myself. And this was Nick's suggestion, and I finally got it. It took me a bit. It didn't come before I did that live stream, but I did finally get a copy of it, so I'm glad to have it. So if you want to hear my thoughts, go check out that album exchange live stream. I'll leave a link to that in the description. And this last one I'll also share is Bruno Mars, and this is his most recent album that came out this year, and it's the Romantic. So I'm supposed to do a live stream with Adam from What the Gym, along with Jason the Millennial, but me and Jason are having some major problems. Not going to go into specifics, but one's a StreamYard thing and the other is a internet thing. So hopefully things work out. So again, I'm going to save my thoughts on this album until we do that video, but I do have it for that review. So again, hopefully things work out eventually. Okay, and now we get to the real meat of this video. So we have a lot to get through, and again, I'm going to try and get through this as quick as I can. So this first one, I guess I can be a little brief on because there's not a ton to say, but we have AC/DC, we have Rock or Bust. This came out in 2014. And again, probably the most notable thing about the album is the album cover, because it's kind of holographic, which is cool. Again, I kind of showed this already in a unboxing video. But yeah, just kind of got this for the sake of trying to get all the AC/DC albums. I only have a few more left to go. But other than that, there's not, again, like I said, there's not a ton to say. It's pretty by the numbers, you know, especially at this point. Just pretty standard stuff, you know, guitars are still pretty solid. Brian Johnson still sounds fine. But, you know, again, by this point, the songs aren't as memorable as some of their other stuff. I think their follow-up, Power Up, is a much better album than this, but still decent enough. So again, don't have much else to add to this one. And now we have a very obscure band, and this is one of those cases, this is a blind buy for me. I just bought it because it seemed interesting. So the band is called Air, and this is their self-titled album. And if I remember correctly, they're a one and done band. This is the only album. I think this came out in 1971. So this is basically a jazz rock album, but what's different is that you have a female lead singer, which is a little bit different. I don't have anything in my collection that's like that. Most of my jazz rock albums are usually male dominated or just plain out instrumental. But I will say this is a pretty nice album. Again, I had no idea what to expect from this one, but I came out really digging it. I really like the musicianship, and I really think the vocals on here are really good. And I'll tell you this now, the vocalist, for some reason, she's credited as just Google, like literally Google. It's gonna be hard to see, but you can kind of see a little bit. I doubt that's her real name. I don't know, you could probably look this up yourself at some point, but it's interesting. She also plays piano, organ, and harpsichord. Bass, drums, not really much guitar, honestly, which I just realized. So again, if you're into jazz rock, I think this is an album you should probably explore, because you might be surprised, because like I said, there's some really good stuff on this. So let me know if you know about this band. Now this is a band I knew I wanted to check out more from, but they're surprisingly hard to come by, and that band is April Wine. And we have the album, The Nature of the Beast. This is a early 80s album, 1981, I think. And I already have one other April Wine album, and that's Stand Back from 75. But this album is much better, I think. Not to say Stand Back was bad. I actually liked Stand Back, but this sounds more up my alley. You know, the guitars are great. I really dig the vocals on this, and it just rocks really hard. It's just very fun stuff, and again, I'm very glad to own another April Wine album. I definitely do want to check out more from this band. Again, any suggestions, like I say, always just leave them in the comments and I'll consider it, and I'll keep my eye out for it. But yeah, great find, April Wine, Nature of the Beast. Check this out if you're into the early 80s rock. And next up, we have the Beach Boys, and we have their final studio album as far as we know, but I'm pretty confident this is going to be the case. We have That's Why God Made the Radio. So getting closer to getting all the Beach Boys albums. I only have a few more. I think I have the late 70s stuff still and a lot of the 80s left, but glad to find this one. You know, for a final album with the Beach Boys, I think this is a very solid way to go out. It's not amazing, but you know, at this point, you can't really expect them to make another Pet Sounds. But it's good. You have Brian Wilson involved in this one, and there's some really nice songs on here. Like the title track was pretty good, which, funny enough, co-written by Jim Peterick from Survivor. If you have not seen my Survivor retrospective, please check it out. But some of the other songs, like Summer's Gone, is really nice. Think About the Days. But it's nothing incredible. There's still some songs that are not as, you know, strong as others. But like I say, for a final album, I think this is a solid enough way to go out. And again, rest in peace to Brian Wilson, but I will say that's not the last time we'll talk about him. Now this is an interesting one. We have a super group. We got a trio that is Jeff Beck, Tim Bogart, and Carmine Appice, or Appice, however you say his last name. But yeah, this is basically it's a blues rock album. But again, you have these big names. You know, Tim Bogart's probably the least known of the three, but he's pretty well known bassist, especially around this time. And of course, we all know Jeff Beck, and then Carmine Appice. Some people may know him, but this is pretty cool. I will say though, it's not like my favorite of this haul. You know, it's blues rock, and you know, it's pretty straight up blues rock. So there's nothing that I would immediately go back to right away, but for the sake of just having these three together, I think it's probably worth admission if you're curious, and you might like this a lot more. But bottom line, I just thought this was this was fine. I liked it enough, and yeah, not much else to add to that one. And now we got Blackfoot, and this is Blackfoot Strikes. And I'm very glad to get another Blackfoot, because not a couple months ago I bought Marauder, and I thoroughly enjoyed Marauder. I really had a great time with that one. And so this is an album, I've heard people say this is another one of their great albums. It has probably one of their biggest songs, and that is Highway Song. And yeah, the whole album is still really good. Like, everything I said about Marauder, you could apply it to here, but this one's a little bit earlier. Every song in here rocks hard. Again, great vocals on here too. And yeah, there's not a song on here I did not like. It was just a very fun time. I still think I might prefer Marauder just a little bit more, but this is still pretty good. So again, I gotta check out more Blackfoot, because they're definitely becoming one of my favorite kind of southern rock band. No, I say southern rock, but I say they're more hard rock. Like, there's definitely a southern undertone, but I feel like the hard rock takes more center stage, but that's just me. And here we have Blink-182. We have Enema of the State. Now, if you saw my Pathetic State of the CD section video, then you already know I bought this album while I was at Walmart. And, you know, Blink-182, you know, they're kind of well known, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. And people say this is like probably they're one of their best albums. And they're basically a pop punk rock sort of band. And I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised. I didn't think I was gonna like it that much, honestly. Again, I just bought it because, again, people say it's good, but again, I wasn't sure. And again, very pleasantly surprised. It's actually a pretty fun album. You know, imagery is kind of interesting, you know, if you know what I mean. So I can see people not being a fan of this because of their more goofier, you know, aesthetic. But if you can get by that, then you might have a fun time with this one. Yeah, not the best thing I heard in my life, but you know, I'm glad to have this in my collection. So yeah, not bad. And now we have some more jazz rock in here. We got Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and I have their debut album, Children is Father to the Man. So I knew I wanted to get this one because I have their second album, which is their self-titled. But people say this is also really good as well, and I do agree. I think it's very nice. Again, you have the horn section, which is very interesting because Chicago also is known for horns. Though I will say, I think I still prefer Chicago. But, you know, Blood, Sweat, and Tears definitely earned their spot. Great, like I say, excellent musicianship. And again, the songs are just pretty solid all the way through. Like, I don't think there's a song in here I flat out hated. It was just a very good time. And I think I still prefer their second album because I think that one hit me a lot quicker. But I can see this one growing on me more times. But glad to find that album in the collection. And now we have two albums from the same band. It's a band that you should know I'm a big fan of, and that is Deep Purple. And I bought their 1990 album, Slaves and Masters. But that's not all, because I also picked up their latest studio album that came out this year, and that is Splat. So we'll start with Demons and Wizards first, or not Demons and Wizards, Slaves and Masters. I mean, they have a very similar theme, I guess. That's kind of how I got confused. But anyway, so Slaves and Masters. So this is a very interesting album. It's pretty much one of the biggest oddballs in their discography, because it's the only album with not Ian Gillan on vocals, not even David Coverdale or Glenn Hughes, but you have Joe Lynn Turner. Now, if you don't know who Joe Lynn Turner is, he actually does have a connection to Rainbow in a sense, because he was once the lead singer of Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow during the late 70s, pretty much a lot of the early 80s basically, early 80s mostly. And, you know, of course, Deep Purple came back in 1984 with Perfect Strangers, but then tensions within the band kind of left to Ian Gillan getting fired again. And so Ritchie decided to bring in Joe for this album. And I'm going to this might be a hot take. This could end up being one of those things where it might be in another video where I talk about 10 albums that people hate but I surprisingly enjoyed. Yeah, I can see this album being in there because people usually are pretty low on this album. Maybe because, you know, with Joe Lynn Turner in the band, this sounds more like a Rainbow album than a Deep Purple album. And I'm not going to disagree, because there's definitely songs on here that definitely reminded me of Joe Lynn Turner Rainbow. But I'm actually not complaining, because I actually do dig those albums with Joe. So, you know, Kings of Dreams I really liked. The Cut Runs Deep. Truth Hurts. Love Conquers All. Fortune Teller. And Wicked Ways. I found myself liking this album a lot more than I thought I would. I mean, I got this purely to complete the discography, but again, this is one of the big surprises here, because I actually don't mind this album. So again, hot take, but you know, it is what it is. But now let's talk about Splat. So again, this is their latest studio album. Pretty wild. They're still releasing albums in 2026. But yeah, pretty decent album. I found myself having a decent time with this. In terms of the more recent Deep Purple albums, I don't think I like this as much as the last one. I think Equals One I think is a bit better to me. But again, there's still some pretty good stuff here. Some strong material like Arrogant Boy, The Rider, Third Call. Let me see, what else did I have here? Just give me a sec here. I also like Diablo, The Only Horse in Town, Guilt Trippin', Jessica's Bra. Very appropriate title. But any case, so again, I like it. But in terms of the more recent stuff, I don't think I like it as much as some of the other stuff they released prior. But again, people are really saying a lot of good things on here. So again, it's good that Deep Purple can still put out some good material, especially this late in the game, especially with how big their discography is. But again, that's more for the fans. And next up, we have Electric Light Orchestra, and we have Balance of Power. So we have a mid-80s album from the band. And, you know, I found that ELO's 80s output kinda weak to me. It's not bad, but the songs on this album just weren't really that remarkable to me. And I don't know. Again, at this point, Jeff Lynne by this point he's a pretty sought after producer for a lot of these classic rock acts. You know, his work with George Harrison, Tom Petty, and Traveling Wilburys later on. You know, he's doing a lot of this stuff, but I think he was better on all those other projects than ELO at this point. Because again, I think the songs are just a bit bland. I don't know, they just really didn't hit me as, you know, as the classic stuff. So I don't know. You would think ELO in the 80s would be a good idea, but I don't know. I'm kind of lukewarm on these albums. Again, maybe they have their fans, but again, I'm not really digging it. And for this next band, we have two albums to talk about, and that is Europe. We have Out of This World from 1988, and then following that, we have their 1991 release, Prisoners in Paradise. So Out of This World was actually the follow-up to The Final Countdown, I think, if I remember correctly. And, you know, The Final Countdown is, again, a great album. Really enjoyed that one. But this is pretty solid. This is a pretty decent follow-up to that one. You have songs like Superstition, Let the Good Times Rock. And then you have, what's interesting, they kind of pull a Whitesnake because they re-recorded one of their early songs, and that song was Open Your Heart from their second album, Wings of Tomorrow. And I really love that song. So it's interesting they decided to re-record it for this album. And it's not bad, but again, I prefer the original. But other than that, Coast to Coast, Signs of the Times, Never Say Die, very strong material on here. Again, not as strong as some of the previous stuff, but still worth checking out if you want to check out more Europe. I can't really say the same about Prisoners in Paradise. I thought this was a very weak album. A lot of the songs are just very generic sounding. And, by this point, this style, by this point they were really into the hair metal scene, and that style of music was really fading out by this point. Because again, we're in 1991, grunge is all the rage. So yeah, this one I would not recommend checking out. It's very skippable. And here we have a nice surprise find. We have the Faces with A Nod Is As Good As a Wink to a Blind Horse. Long title. I don't get why you need to do that. Anyway, so Faces. So of course you have Rod Stewart on lead vocals. And then of course you have Ronnie Wood on guitars. And then you also have, Ronnie Lane from the Small Faces on here. And of course you have Kenny Jones also from the Small Faces. So pretty nice lineup. But yeah, this has probably the biggest hit on this album. On this album, that is "Stay With Me." That's a great one. And the rest of the album is pretty strong. It's just a good old-fashioned kind of folky little, but of course it rocks out a lot as well. And there's some really memorable tracks on here. And again, "Stay With Me," that's kind of a classic, of course. So this was a nice find. This is one I've been meaning to find for quite some time, but glad to finally find it. And so yeah, glad to own it. And now we have another one of these albums that I bought at Walmart in that same CD section video, and that is Garbage with their self-titled album. I made a joke in that video that Garbage, I posed the question, is Garbage garbage? Is the name fitting? And I'm very glad to know that it is not fitting, because this is a pretty good album. Like, very strong material on this. They're kind of like an alternative rock, but they also have a little bit of a dance sort of thing, a little bit. I thought it blended very nicely together. And you have a female singer on here. I think her vocals were pretty cool. And the rest of the music is also is pretty strong. I definitely want to give this album more listens to, because I can see this one growing me the more times I listen to it. But as of now, so far I'm very positive on this one. So glad I bought that. And here is Great White. And I bought another album from them. Actually, I think maybe back in May, I think. I can't remember, but that was a more slightly later album, but this is their first album. And I was curious to see how they sounded like early on, and I can definitely say I think I prefer this over the last one I bought. But I still thought the last one I got was pretty good too, but this is a bit more, slightly more up my alley, because the latter stuff is more in the hair metal scene, but this is definitely them a bit more raw. And I think a bit more aggressive too. And again, I think it plays off really good. So yeah, this is another very strong album. And I'm glad to find this, because I found that I've heard that this album in particular is hard to come by on CD, and I didn't, it wasn't too cheap when I got this, honestly. But I just went for it because again, I just wanted to check out their first album. So again, I'll still check out more Great Whites. Okay, and here is yet another one of these very obscure albums from very obscure bands, and this band is called Holland. And this is another case of a very blind buy, because I saw the album cover, you have this kind of like sewer monster coming out of the sewer. I thought that seemed interesting. And basically, from what I can gather, the band's called Holland because their lead singer his last name is Holland. That's him right there. So this came out in 1985, and it's essentially a 80s hard rock heavy metal album. And I thought it was pretty good. I'm not gonna say it's gonna change your life or anything, but if you're into very obscure bands from the 80s, especially in the rock metal scene, then check this out. The guitars are pretty solid. The songs themselves were pretty good. But yeah, not much else to say. But yeah, it's actually a pretty good listen. And then we have Iron Maiden. We have the Book of Souls from 2015. Slowly but surely, I'm getting close to completing the discography. I only need like a few more albums, but I knew I needed to get this one. So this is a 2-disc album. It's a pretty long one, and there's some very good stuff on here, like If Eternity Should Fail, Speed of Light, The Red and the Black, the title song, Tears of a Clown and The Emperor of the Skies, I think are very strong tracks. I mean, I will say, yeah, maybe it's a bit too ambitious for them, and some of the songs do drag on a bit too long. But you know, I don't mind the spirit of the band. I know some don't really like this style that they're going for in these recent albums, but I don't have that huge of an issue with them. You know, some of them it's really good, but I will say there are songs where they're not as memorable as others. But still, very, very, very fine. Very glad to own another Iron Maiden album. So my Jethro Tull collection continues to grow. I found Under Wraps from 1984. And yeah, I didn't really like this one too much. I think I can say Jethro Tull were really not meant for 80s new wave. Because I don't think Ian Anderson has the right voice for this decade. It was great in the 70s. It was perfect for the style they were doing at the time. But when you're trying to incorporate more electronic sounds or more new wave sounds, I don't think it matches at all. The songs are kind of not really that memorable. It was just not really that good of an album overall. And I think most people would agree this is not really one of their best albums. But yeah, it's pretty kind of a weak one. And we have black metal coming back. It's my only black metal album I bought this month. And that is a band called Judas Iscariot. And this is the album The Dying Light. So I've only ever had one Judas Iscariot album. That's their final album, surprisingly. But I think this is their second album, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, it's black metal. It's very raw. That same raw, very cold sounding that we know of the genre. Pretty strong. I think my only complaint, and I think this is a common complaint with this album, the drums, you know, kind of not the best sounding. Which again, when you talk about black metal, you would expect that's what would be expected. That the production is supposed to be bad, but I don't know. The drums specifically are very high, almost like it's ear piercing at times when they hit the snare. So it wasn't too bad. Like, I was still able to enjoy it for the most part, but that's like the only nitpick I have. I feel the drums are a bit too much. But again, still pretty good stuff here. Glad to find another one because again, these don't come up too often. And then, kind of like Iron Maiden, slowly trying to build the Judas Priest collection, and then we have Nostradamus from 2008. So this is their concept album, and it was okay, I guess. I couldn't really follow the story, honestly. I kind of checked out pretty quickly. You know, musically, I see that they're trying to do something ambitious, and you know, respect for that. But I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I think they tried a bit too hard. And this is not really the type of Judas Priest I would go back to. Yeah, it's kind of a misfire if you're gonna ask me. But you know, I think some people do like that one, but sadly I can't say I'm one of them. Okay, we have some more Kansas, and this is their 1980 release, Audio Visions. So yeah, pretty cool to find more Kansas, and first album of the 80s, and you know, not too bad. Obviously not as strong as their 70s stuff, but you know, for a 80s album, this is actually one of the best ones I've heard. Granted, I haven't heard too many of the 80s stuff. I think I only have one other one, and that's what was that called? Power? Yeah, Power. That was called. And I thought that was just okay. But this is definitely a bit better. It's still incline with a lot of the early stuff. But, you know, you can kind of see some seeds of where they were going. But yeah, very nice to find. Weird back cover, though. And then we have Loverboy, and this is their album, Get Lucky. So I got this because one of my friends, Nick, has recently listened to this album, and he really liked it a lot. And that was the catalyst for me to be like, okay, I really need to check out Loverboy, because of course I know the big hits. I know Working for the Weekend, that's classic 80s song. But I don't really know too much besides that song, and I think one other song from them. But Yeah, this is a very fun album. I can see why Nick enjoys it so much. You know, it has that very fun 80s rock sound, very poppy, a little bit of a new wave edge, but I just really enjoyed the vibe of this album. Some good anthemic sort of songs, very catchy, and I just think it is very much a very fun album. And now we have some more latter period Lynyrd Skynyrd, and we have 1999's Edge of Forever. This is another CD I unboxed on camera not too long ago, and this album is basically on par with a lot of the latter period Skynyrd stuff. Again, people, I always have to say this, but people always ignore these albums, but I've always came out very impressed with these albums, and this is no exception. Some great stuff like Working, Full Moon Nights, Preacher Man, Tomorrow's Goodbye. And funny enough, I mentioned Jim Peterick earlier with the Beach Boys, but here he is again. I think he co-wrote the title song, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, no, I'm not going to go too much, but if you've already heard my thoughts on these albums, then you know I'm a fan. I can say I'm a fan. And here is some more from Meatloaf. We have Hell in a Handbasket. Again, another one I unboxed. So again, as I mentioned in that video, this is his second to last album from 2011. And you know, it's decent. That's all I have to say really. You know, Meatloaf still sounds fine on this album. He still sounds okay. But the songwriting, again, it's just not on par with some other stuff, and again, I don't think Jim Steinman's involved here that much, and it kind of shows. So that's kind of a step down. So it's okay. It's not a bad album, but I can't really say there's a song that I absolutely loved, which is kind of a shame. But again, still just getting more Meatloaf stuff, I guess. And here we have Mike and the Mechanics, and this is The Living Years. So it is about time I finally checked out Mike and the Mechanics, because, you know, I'm a big Genesis fan. You know, I have Phil Collins solo stuff, I have Peter Gabriel solo stuff, so might as well check out some Mike Rutherford solo project. And yeah, this is a pretty nice album. Very pleasant sounding. Of course, it's known for the big hits, the title song, and that's a great song. But yeah, the rest of the album is actually pretty solid. You know, it's kind of more of a soft rock album. It's not really rockin', I would say. But there's still some really good melodies on here. And the reason why I'm turning my head, because I just want to make sure, remind myself of some of the songs I found myself really enjoying. But again, it's just a very well produced album as well, so that's also a big plus. And for some reason I'm having a hard time finding it. There it is, found it. So yeah, the only song I think I wasn't too impressed was Don't, but according to this, the rest of the album is pretty good, so that should be a good indicator. So Mike and Mechanics, very good listen. And here we got two albums from the same band, and it's a band I always talk very highly of, even though I don't talk about them that often, and that's Molly Hatchet's, another great southern rock band. We have some of their latter period stuff. We have 1989, we have, I think, 1989, I believe, 1989, yeah, I think it's 1989. We have Lightning Strikes Twice, and then we have another 90s album, 1998, Silent Reign of Heroes. Again, great album covers. So I unboxed these on camera as well, and I think of the two, I think I prefer this one, but this album is still pretty good too. Like, again, Molly Hatchet, very consistent band. Even though I've only heard 4 at this point, I definitely want to binge this band at some point, because there's some really good heavy guitar work, but the southern rock's still very much in part of their sound. I mean, with Blackfoot earlier, again, there's definitely some southern rock undertones, but it's mostly hard rock according to my ears. But this one, it's hard rocking, but you still get that southern edge, which is pretty cool. So very much enjoying Molly Hatchet a lot. So yeah, even these later albums, like, I don't even know if they're considered classic albums, but I think they're pretty good stuff here. All right, now we got Motley Crue. We have Dr. Feelgood. Now, I've said this before. It's been a while since I mentioned this, but it might be a shock, but I'm not really that big of a Motley Crue fan. I don't know. I have Shout the Devil, and I wasn't really that impressed with that album. It was fine, but it just wasn't for me. So, you're probably wondering why I bought this album. Well, because there's one song I actually do like on this album, and that's Kickstart My Heart. I've always liked that song. And so, I bought the whole album. I'm curious to see if the rest of the album maybe is on par with Kickstart My Heart. And I will say, I came out liking this a lot more than I thought I would, honestly. This might be my favorite Motley Crue album. Not sure how big of a hot take that is, but still, I don't know what made this one different. Maybe because I thought the songs were more memorable to me. The title song was pretty solid. Slice of Your Pie, Rattlesnake Shake. I already mentioned Kickstart My Heart. Without You, Same Old Situation, She Goes Down, Don't Go Away Mad. Yeah, not bad. I don't know if I'll buy any more Motley Crue. Maybe Girls, maybe. But yeah, I'm shocked too. And now we got some Motorhead. We have a little bit more of a later album. This is from 1987, I think. We have Rock and Roll. Pretty solid album, and of course, very cool album cover too. Again, short albums, as always, to expect with Motorhead, but it's pretty rockin'. It's pretty heavy. And yes, even though it's in the 80s, it's still pretty strong. Yeah, it's very short, like 34 minutes to be precise. But every song on here is very strong, very much in dig this album. It's always good to find Motorhead albums because, again, they don't really come out. I don't really see them too often in the wild, but I just went for it. And we have Mr. Big with Actual Size. I don't know what they're implying with that. But in any case, so this is actually an album I've been meaning to find for some time, but it's really hard because apparently, it kind of makes sense. But Mr. Big is, even though they're an American band, they were pretty big, or maybe still very big, in Japan. So this is actually a Japanese import, because that's like the only way I can get this album is from Japan. But the reason why I wanted this album is because there's one song I've always loved, and that is the song Shine. And I mentioned this in a past video because the song was used in an anime, Hellsing to be precise. Kind of odd choice given the subject matter of that anime, but still, I love that song, so I need to get it on CD, and here it is. And the rest of the album is also pretty solid. Again, nothing amazing, but if you just want to chill out with some more, when did this come out? Like early 2000s. If you don't mind some 2000s rock, you might be surprised with that one. And here we have a 2-in-1 pack, and we're going way back. We're going to the 50s. We have Ricky Nelson, and this pack has his first 2 albums. His first album called Ricky, and his second album called Ricky Nelson. Again, in the 50s, no one really cared about titles that much, I guess. But, Ricky Nelson, he was pretty well known in like the early rock and roll days. And it's actually okay. It's not bad. I'm not going to say I loved it, because I'm not too enthralled with a lot of early rock and roll. I mean, I do like some of it, but it's never been my go-to per se, because again, I'm more of a 70s, 80s person. I don't really go back to the 50s too often. And album-wise, it's just a bunch of singles just thrown together, and some other covers, which, to be expected at this point. But yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it's pretty interesting to have some Ricky Nelson in the collection, but I don't know. I don't think I'll get any more. But, I guess he's important for rock and roll, I guess. And then we have an interesting one. We have an album called, and I'm probably going to butcher this, Ars Longa Vita Brevis. I can't remember what that means, but this is from a band called The Nice. And what's interesting about The Nice is that this is where Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer got his start. So yeah, a lot of the hallmarks from Keith Emerson are on this album. Because again, there's lots of classical influence on here, which we all know Keith for bringing in. And I think album-wise, I think it's pretty cool. Especially if you're a big ELP fan and you want to hear him kind of more early. Very fascinating, especially if you love keyboards and piano. And the rest of the band was pretty solid too. Another one I probably need to give more listens to, but yeah, first listen, that was pretty nice. I like the pink CD case, disc, which is I always get a kick out of. But still, very nice album, very pleasant. And here is another band I've been meaning to check out for quite some time. I bought 2 of their albums, and the band is Paramore. We have 2007, simply called Riot. And then after that, I have their more recent album, which came out in 2023. So yeah, it's been a bit since they put out an album. But this is called This Is Why. So Paramore are a band I hear about from time to time. And I've always been wanting to check them out because it seems like a band I might enjoy. And bottom line, based on these 2, I definitely am slowly becoming a fan. I think I need to check out more from them because I really dig their sound. You know, it's kind of, has an alternative rock. I wouldn't say an indie rock. I won't go that far. But very cool. Some good guitars. I like the female singer. I think she sounds really nice, and again, some great drumming. It's just very cool, very catchy songs. Of the 2, I think Riot's definitely my favorite. I think this one, is a lot stronger, but I really think it's a very top-notch album. And This Is Why it's pretty solid too. I don't like it as much as Riot because there's a few songs on here I didn't like as much, but if this is a good indicator, I definitely want to check out more Paramore because I definitely want to dive into them because I dig their vibe and just made me want to see what else they have in store for me. Okay, and now we got Poison. We got Open Up and Say Ah. Of course, this is the CD version with the full cover because there's versions of this where they censor it, especially because that tongue. What does that tongue do? But in any case, besides that, yeah, I got Poison because it was a big album. I'm assuming it was. I mean, it had some big hits on here with like Every Rose Has Its Thorn, and yeah, I don't mind that song. But yeah, besides that, it's kind of like the same sort of Motley Crue. This is not really going to say I'm a Poison fan. I don't know why I don't like him. Maybe because it's Bret Michaels' vocals. I just think he's kind of a bland singer. And, the music is also kind of safe. There's nothing really that biting to it. So, that's basically my thoughts on Poison. And then we got The Pretenders, and I picked up Pretenders 2. So, I recently re-listened to the Pretenders album, their first album, and I can't remember if I ever said this on video, and I know I will say, at first I was not big on the debut, mainly because I wasn't crazy on Chrissie Hynde's vocals, but I did re-listen to the album not that long ago, and I do like it a lot more, and so I decided to check out their second album. And you know what? I think I'm way too harsh. I was way too harsh on the debut, because the debut was actually pretty good. This is solid, but yeah, I don't think it's as good as the debut. There's still some nice moments on here, and again, Chrissie Hynde's vocals are growing on me, so I don't mind it as much now. But yeah, I feel like the songs on here are good, but nothing as strong. That's just me though. But I do like has a little bit more of a new wave approach on some of them, and yeah, some good guitars. But yes, this is a solid follow-up. But maybe I need to give this some more listens like I did with the debut, and maybe it'll click for me then. We'll see. And now we got some more Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's right, I bought 2 more. We have 1989's Mother's Milk, and then we have 1991's, let's see, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. odd title aside. But yeah, I picked up these two from Red Hot Chili Peppers because if you didn't know, I'm slowly growing an appreciation for this band after kind of ignoring them for a while. And you know, these two are kind of seen as like transition albums because their early stuff is like very funky, hip-hop oriented. And this is them, they're starting to put more, I guess, more poppy hooks on their albums, making them sound a little bit more conventional, but still having that sort of funky hip-hop roots in there. And I will say, I was not sure if I was going to like this album, but after giving it a listen, might be a hot take, I actually prefer this over this one. Because I was surprised, because this is actually very heavy. Like, there are times it gets almost metal-like. Again, bass work from Flea is great, Chad Smith, great drumming. And yeah, there's just some very good memorable tracks on here, which I was very surprised of. You know, not everything works, because again, some of the hip-hop stuff gets a bit much. But aside from that, I really had a fun time with this album, so that's cool. Not to say I don't like this album, because again, this had some pretty big singles on here, like Under the Bridge and Give It Away. But yeah, this one's definitely a lot more funky and kind of more the hip-hop sort of vein, which I wasn't as into, but still a very solid album. I still liked it enough. So there you go. There's more Red Hot Chili Peppers. So we'll see where I go from here. And then here are some more CDs I bought in that same CD section Walmart Target video. And in Target I bought 2 CDs, and that was Olivia Rodrigo's, pretty much the remaining albums I needed from her. So we have Sour. This was her debut album. And then we have her latest album that came out this year, which is You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. So of course these are exclusive Target album covers. These aren't the original, but you know, I don't care really. It's fine enough. On her debut album, I was actually shocked because, you know, what I do like about Olivia Rodrigo, you know, she's a pop artist, but there's also a little bit of some rock in there, like kind of a pop rock sort of act, which I really like. I was actually shocked. There's not too much on her debut. A lot of it's actually very mellow. There's a lot of ballads, which is not a bad thing, but I was kind of expecting a lot more guitars. Like, the song that I usually think of is Good For You, and that's a pretty rock, that has some rock parts in it. But aside from that song and maybe a couple others, the rest, again, very ballad, very piano heavy. So it's a solid debut, but I think she still had some growing to do. And then she released Guts, which I have already, and I think that's a good album. But this one is probably, might be my favorite album from her overall. I think this is her most consistent album. I think it has a very cool, very nice sort of vibe throughout. You have a good mixture of more rockers, but you also have some ballads. I think it's a good blend of both. And you got Robert Smith from The Cure guesting on one of the songs, which is kind of interesting. And I actually do like that song quite a bit. But I think the songs are a lot more catchier and very good production-wise. So yeah, again, I dig Olivia Rodrigo. Definitely looking forward to what she comes out with next. But yeah, very, very nice. So it's interesting, I have bought quite a bit of albums that came out in the current year. That doesn't happen too often. So we're gonna keep that train going because we have the Rolling Stones with their latest album with Foreign Tongues. You know, the album cover it has a lot of mixed opinions on it. It's kind of a more twisted version of The Miracle by Queen. I don't know, which one do you prefer? Which do you prefer, this cover or The Miracle? Comment below. Maybe I'll do a poll on that in my community tab. Anyway, so the Rolling Stones' latest album, you know, I really enjoyed the last album, Hackney Diamonds. I always thought, like, I was kind of hoping that would be their final album because I think it has a very fitting conclusion. But of course, that's not the case. And you know, I will say this is actually a very solid album. Like, there's some good stuff on here. So let me just quickly quickly kind of run down all the songs I really liked a lot. And it's a good ratio. I think a good chunk of the album I like Rough and Twisted, In the Stars, Jealous Lover is actually one of my favorites. Divine Intervention, Never Want to Lose You, Some of Us, Side Effect. There's some good material on here. Of course, this supposedly has the last drum performance by Charlie Watt on a song. So that's kind of sad. And there's a lot of guest stars. You have Paul McCartney, Bruno Mars is on here. Funny enough, we talked about Robert Smith a bit ago, and now here he is again doing backing vocals on a song. So that's interesting. So Robert Smith has been pretty busy this year. In any case, I still think Hackney Diamonds is a more fitting conclusion. And I think because with Hackney Diamonds, there's a song where you have Bill Wyman on here and Charlie, and it's kind of sad that Bill Wyman's not on here. So again, that's another reason why I think Hackney Diamonds has a more fitting conclusion. Another reason why I think so is because I think, in Hackney Diamonds, the last song was Rolling Stone, the song that inspired their name. And I thought that would have been a cool full circle, situation. But again, we don't really do that here. So, I don't know, kind of a missed opportunity, but that's not to say I don't like this album. I think it definitely warrants to exist. But that's just me. That's like my little gripe with it. But again, there's still some good material on here if you're curious to check it out. Here's a very interesting find. We have Diana Ross with her debut solo album from 1970. Yeah, so Diana Ross with her first album. That was worth checking out. Of course, this is known for having her version of Ain't No Mountain High Enough. The Marvin Gaye, Tammy Terrell track. And, production-wise, great. I really like the production-wise. The string arrangement's really nice. The only thing, this might be a hot take, I'm not that crazy about this version because, Diana decides to go for a more spoken word approach, which I'm like, I was kind of hoping she would belt it a bit more. I mean, she does belt it, and the backing vocals on the chorus is lovely. But again, I kind of wish she was not doing a spoken word thing. So that's my only gripe with that. I still prefer the original. But the rest of the album itself is pretty nice. It's got your traditional soul R&B sound, and again, for the most part, Diana sounds really nice, as to expected from her. It's not my favorite album in this haul, but still, glad I found it. And I guess it's also not easy to come by. And now we come to a band I've been wanting to check out more for a long time, and that is Savatage. And this is 1990 or 1989, somewhere around there. We have Gutter Ballet. Alright, so I already have one other album from the band, and that is Hall of the Mountain King, and that's a fantastic album. And yeah, this is another excellent album. Definitely one of my favorites of this haul. Just very heavy, but very theatrical and very bombastic and epic sounding, which is what I love. Again, the vocals are great guitar work, and yeah, just some very memorable tracks on this. So another reason why I really need to dive into Savatage a lot more, because I feel like there's a lot more to them that I would really enjoy, but this is a great find. And I was very lucky to find this, because I was at a record store, not my usual one, but I was at a different one, and it wasn't a huge CD selection, but after going through the main shelves, I found a separate box hidden away that if you weren't paying attention, you would have definitely missed. So I looked in the box, and lo and behold, this was in here. So very glad I found that box. Otherwise, I could have missed out. But there we go. Savatage, Gutter Ballet. Great heavy metal album. And still keeping on the heavy metal theme, we have Skid Row, Slave to the Grind. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to buy any more Skid Row, because I have their debut album, and it's fine. I don't mind it. But there's stuff on there I'm not crazy about. But you know, people say this is, if not better than their debut, to some. So I decided to give it a chance. And you know what? I'm gonna be one of those people. I would say this is better than their debut, even though there's not too many like major hits. There's some singles on here, but not as big as some of the ones on the debut. But yeah, I think this is a much better, more heavier album. I think the guitars sound really good. I think the songwriting is a lot better. Not everything works, but there's still some very strong material on here. So this was another pleasant surprise. Like, I found myself really digging this. Don't know if I'll buy more Skid Row. This might be my last one, unless I'm proven otherwise. So let me know. Okay, and now we get to the Smiths. We have Meat is Murder. Alright, so this is me giving the Smiths another chance. Because, you know, they have a big fan base. Like, people love the Smiths. But I'm sorry, folks. Yet again, I just didn't really resonate with this one. And again, this is like, I feel like I should like this, because I do like Johnny Marr's guitar. You know, it has a very great tone. Besides that, the songs just didn't really do anything for me. It's just kind of, eh. You know, people say this is there's another one of their good albums. So I don't know. I don't know why the Smiths just aren't clicking for me. But you know, I've tried. I tried again. I gave it another go. But I don't know. It's just not doing anything. So it could be just me or whatnot. And just know, this has nothing to do with Morrissey. You know, Morrissey, you know, he's kind of a very controversial figure, very polarizing figure. But I'm not, it's not him I'm trying to blame. It's just the music just doesn't do much. I'm sorry. On a more positive note, I did pick up another live album, and that is Supertramp, Paris. Yeah, so this is a pretty big, I guess, their most loved live album. Of course, it came out in 1980, and yeah, has all the big hits you want. Sounds great, great performances. What else do you want? What else do you want? So yeah, I got it because, yeah, Supertramp, and has a lot of the songs I love, and they do play it really good. So again, not much else to say about it really, but yeah, there's another live album in the collection. And here we have some more from Traffic. We have John Barleycorn Must Die. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but still, some more Traffic for the collection. I like it. Not a bad album. You know, nothing too memorable, but still, like, the vibe's okay. I think there's better albums from this band, but again, I got it. It was not too expensive, so might as well. Why not? And we have the first album I'm trying out with this band. They're pretty big in Canada, and that's Triumph. And I got Thunder 7. Now, I'm not sure if this is a good one to start with, but just know I saw this on Whatnot, and I just went for it because I knew I wanted to check out Triumph. But good start or not. I found this is a pretty nice one. There's some good stuff on here. I definitely think there's probably other better albums out there, and I don't know. I don't think most fans say this is their best album, but for a start, I think it's definitely a good one. There's, again, I like the vocals on here. I think the production is pretty cool, and again, it's very rockin', very good rock stuff. So if there's a better album I need to check out, let me know. Again, let me know about this stuff, because again, Triumph is another one of those bands, like I mentioned, I need to dive in more. So again, comment below. Okay, and now we get to a little bit of a sad part of this video. We have 2 albums from this singer, and we have Bonnie Tyler, and we have 2 albums from her. I picked up Faster Than the Speed of Night, and then we have the follow-up, I believe, with Secret Dreams and Forbidden Fire. So we lost Bonnie Tyler not too long ago, and you know, great singer. I've always loved her style, very raspy. Of course, I've heard she was not always raspy. I think early on she had a more clear voice, but I think she had like surgery on her voice at some point, which left her raspy, but she still went on, and I think it worked out great. So I after her passing, it really made me want to check out her albums, because of course I know the big hits, but I want to see if there's more beyond those. So we'll start with this one right here. So this is kind of her comeback in a way, because this is produced by Jim Steinman, and this had the big hit with Total Eclipse of the Heart, and that's a fantastic power ballad. It has all the hallmarks of Jim Steinman, very theatrical, very bombastic, which I love. So of course I love that song. That goes without saying. Although this is gonna sound bad, given that she passed away not that long ago, but I will say the rest of the album is kind of spotty. There's some good songs though, like Faster Than Speed of Nights is a good title song. It's A Jungle Out There, Straight from the Heart, which is, of course, that's a Bryan Adams song, so that's kind of surprising. But there's a couple covers. There's a couple covers on here that are fine. You have Going Through the Motion by Blue Oyster Cult, which is kind of interesting. And then you have a cover of Have You Ever Seen the Rain by CCR. Not a bad cover, but kind of odd to start your album with that one. So, I don't know. Not a bad album, but definitely a little bit spotty, as I said. But that's it. I think this is to me, this is a better album. I think there's a lot more songs on here that were much better. Not many covers, I don't think. And you still have Jim Steinman producing. So you have a good combination here. So Ravishing, good opening song. If You Were a Woman is nice. Then you have Lovin' You's a Dirty Job, which I think Meatloaf would sing on a later album. Rebel Without a Clue, Lovers Again, and of course it has the other big hit with Holding Out for a Hero from Footloose. So I think this is a better album to me overall. But again, it's still nice to get Bonnie Tyler in the collection. Again, regardless, still has a great voice, and sad that she's no longer with us. So rest in peace to Bonnie. And we only have a few more left. Next up, we have the Velvet Underground with Loaded. So Loaded is an interesting album to talk about, because this is when the band were trying to actually make a hit album. So they decided not to be as experimental. So this resulted in this, Loaded. And actually, I like this album. I can see people not liking this one because it's not as experimental as some of the previous stuff, but when they tried to do something a bit more conventional, it actually worked out pretty good. Of course, it didn't sell well. Like I said in the past video, I mean, Velvet Underground were not really a big seller at that point. But Who Loves the Sun, which if I remember correctly, that doesn't have Lou Reed on vocals. I think that's Doug Yule, and actually not too bad. Not a bad start. But then you have Sweet Jane. That's a nice one. Rock and Roll is good. Let me see, what else did I mention here? I know for the most part the whole album was pretty enjoyable. Cool It Down, Head Held High, I Found a Reason. All strong stuff here. So very cool to find this one. I think I only need one more album to complete the discography, and that's Squeeze. So we'll see if I ever find that one. And now we have two albums from the same artist, and if you can recall back towards the beginning of this video, I mentioned Brian Wilson, and he was going to come back. And here he is, because I found two of his solo albums. We have his first official solo album from 1988. It's just a self-titled album. And then we have not his final, but his last album with all original material, and that is No Peer Pressure. So, very cool to find these. So I will say this is a very good album. Definitely my favorite of the two. This is late 80s, so I wasn't expecting it to sound that good, but it was very well done. Like, of course, you have Love and Mercy, great song. And then you have Walking the Line, Little Children, Nighttime. Meet Me in My Dreams Tonight. And then you have this very interesting closing song with Rio Grande with a lot of different sections, like very on par with a lot of his 60s, what he did in the 60s with how he just switched up to different sections here. A very fascinating one. So this was very cool. Definitely a very interesting album. Like, if you have not checked out Brian Wilson's solo stuff, I say check out his first album. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But this album here is also very nice. Some good stuff. Brian's a lot older. This is from 2015, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so obviously his voice is a lot older, so that might be a turnoff for some. But there's a lot of guests on here. Not all of the guests work, but when they work out fine, I think they blend really well. Al Jardine and David Marks guest on 2 songs as well. And probably my favorite song on here is actually the song Saturday Night, which features Nate Roos, who was the lead singer of Fun. I think that's a good song. And then the last song, aptly titled The Last Song, I think is a very fitting closing because, like I said, this is not his last album, but it's his last album with all original material. So I think in that regard, I think this is a very solid one for him to go out, because his next album was more of like a covers album, just an instrumental piano cover album of a lot of his big songs. So take that for what you will, but I think this is a much more fitting conclusion to Brian's career. And yeah, I liked it still. So yeah, Brian Wilson solo stuff, some well done material. And we only have one more CD left, and that is XTC with Black Sea. Kind of rhymed. So cool to find more XTC. One of those bands I'm always intrigued by. I still want to dedicate more time to them because I feel like they're a band you don't really get on the first listen. You need to really spend dedicated time to them. But on the first listens, they're usually very enjoyable. There's some really cool, quirky stuff here. The vocals are very fun. There's some good arrangements. It's just a very enjoyable listening. But again, I feel like I could like these a lot more on more repeats. So we'll see how it changes over time. But so far, very impressed with this one as well. But there you go. That was a lot, of course, but I still ain't done, because there's 2 CDs that I do not have here right now because they're still in the mail, and I wanted to include them here as well. But we need to go look down on the floor here, and let's talk to Future Bryer yet again. He'll unbox those remaining 2 CDs. So take it away, Future Bryer. Why, thank you, Bryer. Here we go. Here we have the 2 last remaining packages right here, and we're going to unbox these right here and therefore conclude the CD haul. I'll start with this one right here. We'll just simply rip this one open. And in this one we have Weird Al Yankovic with Bad Hair Day. And the reason why we got this is because it's part of the album exchange yet again. So, I mean, it's cool to get more Weird Al. I don't have a ton, so it's cool to have another one. Of course, I know some of the songs. You have Amish Paradise, and then you also have The Night Santa Went Crazy, and Dumps is another pretty popular one. But pretty nice there. Now let's open up this one. This one, we're going to need the box cutter for this one. Okay, we can kind of see it already, and we have a 2-in-1 CD. We have Leslie Gore, and this pack comes with I'll Cry If I Want To, and Sings of Mixed Up Hearts. All right, so this is a 2-in-1 disc, and the reason I got this was because, yet again, it's part of the album exchange. And this was like the cheapest way to get it on CD, because of course when you get these like early 60s and even some of the 50s albums for that matter are very hard to come by. And yeah, again, like I said, this was the cheapest way to get it. And even this wasn't that cheap. It was a little bit pricey, but at least we kind of own it on CDs. So I'm just going to quickly take the shrink wrap off it, just to kind of see what it looks like inside. Okay, and the disc, oh, it looks like a little record. That's kind of nice. Very, very novel. And then let me just see the inside. Okay, just a bunch of different covers there. And then just quickly, just curiosity, just curious what the booklet has for this one. And yeah, just gives you like some brief history, a little summary, and all that stuff. So that's pretty nice. But there you go. Pretty quick here. Those are the two CDs. And yeah, now we actually have them both. And now we can officially close out the city haul. So back to you, Bryer. Thank you, future Bryer. Well, that will do it. So hopefully it was worth the wait coming back to these monthly CD hauls. It's always fun to see what gets added. And of course, we'll see how it all stacks up by the end of the year. But I almost forgot one more thing. Also got to showcase the rankings of all the CDs that were shown in this video here. So again, we'll see how these stack up by the end of the year. But as always, if you enjoyed these monthly CD hauls, don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on any of the CDs that were shown. I look forward to reading them. And of course, make sure you check out Patreon page and other places to support the channel. And that's going to do it for me. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care, and goodbye for now.